Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, sir.
You are ready for the go? Good, very good.
मी माझा व्हिडिओ बंद केला. माझा बंद केले, बाकी सगळे दिसतात मला.
How are you all?
कॅमेरा
Counter.
He's unmuted, right?
No, you are muted. You have muted yours. Yeah, now it's unmuted. Yes.
Yeah. Now,
No, you need to find all the people who want to say.
गोराई, क्या नाम है उसका? हाँ, तो वो क्या ऑन ड्यूटी है क्या?
सर वो उसमें थी ना, क्या बोलते पहले मैटरनिटी लीव में थी, फिर पीसीएम में गई थी, फिर उसके बाद 31 को उसको बोला ज्वाइन करने के लिए, मगर फिर लॉकडाउन हो गया।
पर वो घर में तो उसका नंबर देना जरा मुझे।
परमिता का? मैं व्हाट्सएप करता हूँ।
व्हाट्सएप करो। हाँ, पर क्या नाम है उसका पूरा? परमिता गोराई।
परमिता गोराई।
ओके, और मुझे व्हाट्सएप करो नंबर। अरे मैं चेक कर रहा हूँ यार, यहाँ ये 3 बजे से मीटिंग है ना इनकी, इनके पर्टिकुलर गेम्स की।
अच्छा अच्छा, मैं व्हाट्सएप कर रहा हूँ।
ओके,
बात करूंगा तो फिर ओके हो जाएगा।
क्या? तुम किसी का आवाज सुनाई दे रहा है तुमको?
किसी का नहीं।
मुझे भी नहीं दे रहा है, क्यों? शायद ऊपर क्रॉस करके रखा
लिखा हुआ है,
शायद उन लोगों ने ऑफ करके रखा होगा, सभी चिल्ला रहा है ना।
हेलो हेलो
लिखा हुआ है अपने आप।
चेंज कर दीजिए।
अभी आया था अभी।
हेलो बुकर सर।
जी बुआ जी कैसे हो?
Dear all, please unmute your mic if the person is not saying it. Everyone unmute your mic.
बुआ जी कैसे हो?
हेलो अर्जुन सर।
ये तो आ गया भी सही।
Hello sir, good afternoon.
गुड आफ्टरनून सर। डालना ही
लाइट जलाओ दिखो हमको।
अरे वो मुझे शुरू बता रहे थे तो काम में नहीं आएगा। ये तो बच्चे
आपने कैसे
What happened? हेलो तो अभी मैं वो मैंने की हुई है वीडियो क्लिप तो वो दिखा तेरे को
अब राखी कहाँ है?
ओ यार वो अपना हाँ
है तो नहीं, मीटिंग में तो है नहीं है इसमें।
तेरी आई है तू मैंने मून मून भी तो यार वहाँ पे डेट रखा बिस्तर पे
अच्छा, चैट कर रही है वो, हाँ?
अभी तो कुछ नहीं कर रहा क्या चलता है ये
हाँ?
फिर वो वीडियो में क्यों नहीं है? वो ऐसे थोड़ा ना होता है। अब मैंने व्हाट्सएप भी कर दिया, यू हैव नॉट स्टिल ज्वाइन।
கிளாஸ் நடந்துருக்கு அமைதியா இருக்கணும் கடந்து
अभी तो पर यहाँ ज्वाइनिंग तो आ ही जाती है, जैसे आप लोगों को मैं चेक कर रहा हूँ पूरे आ रहे हो, राखी ने नहीं आया, परमिता वहाँ के धर्मशाला के दोनों कोचेज आ गए।
साढ़े मार रहा है पुलकारी
चालू हुई नहीं तो सेटिंग कर लिया
शुरू करो राजा गोपाल साहब भी आ गए
Request all participants to mute your mic.
Noted, sir. Noted.
Please mute your mic. And when required, you can put on your mic yourself. Good
Radha
evening.
sir, your voice is echoing.
Good evening, respected guests and dear friends. This program is about 4 weeks. We will start from today and will be ending by 16th of
Join
May.
audio कर दिया
Again, I am requesting the participant to mute your mic.
देखती हूँ मैं करके देखती हूँ अब क्या होता है आप मुझे बता देना वैसे तो मैं तब तक ज्वाइन करके देखती हूँ
राधा कृष्ण राधा कृष्ण
I can hear you, sir.
Everybody
अपना सबका म्यूट करेगा
you can
you can handle
mute participants once
all the administrators
Krishna sir you can mute participants at once from your
Shall I start now, sir? Good evening, respect guests and my dear friends. This program about 4 weeks will be starting from today and will be ending by 15 May. We have wonderful resource person along with us, Mr. Walker Herman, the High Performance Director of Athletic Federation of India, Miss Galina. She is a very renowned coach and she was the head coach of US University and she is the head coach for our 4x400 meter relay and 400 meter. Then we have Dr. Klaus. He is a high profile javelin, high performance javelin coach. Along with us, Mr. James Healer. He is the head coach of the high performance center at Odisha. And Miss Mihira Kopkar. She is the nutritionist working with us for last 1 year. On behalf of Sports Authority of India, Athletic Federation, I welcome respected Deputy General of SAI, Director General of SAI, Sri Pradhan Sir, and our President, Sri Adil Sumariwara Sir, Colonel Rajagopalan Sir, and our respected Executive Director, Colonel Bishnoi Sir, and all participants. Now I request Colonel Bishnoi Sir to take over the proceedings.
Thank you, Mr. Radha. Before I start, Radha, as a host, you can mute everybody and you can control the mute on your part. That will do later. I'll start my address. First of all, on behalf of Sports Authority of India, I welcome Mr. Adil Sir. He is the President of Athletic Federation of India. Dr. Lalit, the Chairman of Planning Committee of AFI and also President of Cep Athletics Federation of India. With this, we have got Commander Rajagopala, he is CEO TOPS. All our lecturers whom Mr. Radha has mentioned. And a very hearty welcome to all the participants who are here. I am seeing a very overwhelming response. It has reached 425 now, and I think it is going to cross 500. Seeing this kind of response, I think we have to increase the capacity of our Zoom from tomorrow onwards. But let's see that how this thing is conducted now, because we have restricted this participation so that a value and a quality education program can be received by you. So it's my humble request to maintain the do's and don'ts, which Mr. Radha is going to inform later after our address. And I think you all will enjoy this e-learning session, which we have conducted with support of Athletic Federation of India and their instructors who are all with us, and they will be calling as guest lectures from the foreign countries also. Now, may I request Mr. Adil sir to please give some motivating words to our participants and also motivate them that they learn through this e-learning, and this kind of e-learning can further be developed, and also our coaches get benefited at grassroots level, sir. Thank you, sir. Over to Adil sir now, sir.
Thank you, ED sir. Radha, please put everybody on mute. You are the administrator, please put everybody on mute. There are too many people talking in the background. I can't understand our coaches why they can't go on mute. Radha. Okay. So, Radha, please put everybody on mute.
Yes, sir, I'm doing it. I'm doing it, sir.
जितेंद्र, आप म्यूट पे चले जाओ, आपका स्पीकर माइक ऑन है.
Console.
People are going to keep talking in between. I don't know how you'll conduct a course. Please put on mute.
Adil sir, you can start now. I think he's put everybody on mute, sir.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, ED sir. So welcome everybody.
Adil, I think you are on mute.
No, I'm
It is cleared.
Now we can hear you.
Yeah. So, said, welcome everybody, especially in these difficult times. Please follow the government's protocol to keep yourself and your family safe by staying at home. And if you need to go out, please adopt social distancing and the protocol given to you. A new beginning to start upgradation of knowledge of coaches to video conferencing, especially at a time when we are stuck at home. In my view, sports is nothing but science, biomechanics, biochemistry, etc. And as you know, knowledge has no limits. And we are here to help you to get a better range of sports education for yourself. I am very glad that DG Sai has acknowledged the importance of the coaches' knowledge enhancement program, as this is a very important factor that will help us produce world-level athletes. I welcome senior ED academics, Karun Bishnoi, who has taken a lot of pain to put this together, along with tops Commander Rajesh Rajagopal. Let me tell you a little about AFI. We started the World Athletics, what was originally known as IAAF Level 1 coaching program about a year ago. We are conducting about 12 courses every year, consisting each of 24 candidates. As of today, we've already got more than 560 coaches who successfully completed level 1. It is AFI's endeavor that in the next few years, we will have at least 5,000 level 1 coaches with their presence in every district. To achieve this target, AFI will also start an online coaching program. And this program will be for ex-athletes, physical education teachers, and even parents. We have also conducted World Athletics Level 2 coaching certification program, and about 95 people have passed this exam. Coaches who have qualified is about 95 level 2, which is a very big number for India. We also started upgradation and refresher courses online, which commence from 27th of March, which will continue for a month, which is going on today. And I spoke in the morning at 10 o'clock. We have an excellent faculty, including Mr. Folka, who is our high performance instructor, Mr. Radhakrishna, Deputy Chief Coach, who has got an IO qualification, Dr. Klaus, who's a biomechanics specialist, and other experts, Galina, who's herself an Olympic medalist, and James Hiller of UK. I am happy that under the dynamic leadership of Sandeep Pradhanji, the DG of Science, they have taken steps which will go a long way. Can you put your mics on mute, please? I am very happy that under the dynamic leadership of Shri Sandeep Pradhanji, the DG of Sai, have taken many steps which will go a long way in our quest for world dominance in sport. I am sure that these joint efforts will help us to improve the standard of our coaches with the latest scientific knowledge and research which is available with World Athletics. There are 3 issues which I want to raise before I finish. The first issue is the issue of drugs and forbidden substances. We are taking very stringent action. We are going to do scope control even at state meets, even at junior meets. We have to stop this menace and we need the support of coaches for this. The second thing is training. And somebody please put the mics on mute. The children are speaking in the background. The second thing is overtraining of our athletes at a very young age, which is killing our sport. That's the other thing that we need to do, and that is why we are doing these so many programs to upgrade the knowledge of our coaches so that our coaches are aligned with some of the best practices in the world. The third place where we really need help, the third place where we really need help is overage athletes. Coaches must stop overage athletes, for which we have taken a lot of pain. We are issuing identity cards. We are doing biometrics, and we are doing testing for medical testing to ensure that we don't get overage participation. We are running this program in a very, very professional manner, and AFI believes that with the training, with the coaching of coaches, we also need a very robust competition program for every age group, because without that, it's of no use. We also run one of the largest sub-junior talent search grassroots level program in the whole world. Our inter-district athletic program, where this year more than 500 districts took part. Next year, we are aiming at 600 districts taking part. We are the only federation in the world, in India, that is going down to grassroots level, bringing them to a national level, and having a competition for under 16 children. So, coaches, I just saw Dr. Bhanot has joined in. I want to welcome and thank Dr. Bhanot, who's been an integral part of this program, who's the chairman of our Planning and Coaching Commission, who has taken a lot of pains to introduce these coaching programs and upgradation for our coaches so that we are in line with the best in the world. So coaches, before I end, I want to say you are a very, very important part of our whole.
और आप ये बताइए कि आपको क्या अपना अटेंडेंस देना है ना? आप पार्टिसिपेंट में जाके चैट्स में जाके अटेंडेंस दीजिए अपना।
पार्टिसिपेंट में क्लिक करो।
यार बंद करो यार।
क्लिक किया है। तो ऊपर में आया
नीचे चैट्स। चैट्स।
Oh, chat. Chat में आया।
Will unmute everyone, please.
Everyone.
Block these participants, I think.
अपना नाम?
They don't understand what they are doing.
Why do they come on a call if they don't understand? To push themselves.
इसमें मेरा एड्रेस पूरा लिख दूं?
हाँ, लिख दीजिए अपना पूरा।
अच्छा, एक मिनट।
Cep Athletics coach.
एक मिनट।
Rather mute them, यार.
I tried, sir, but
Let Mr. Mittal handle. He is the technical person. He will mute everybody.
Now we need to find. I know, but what about
he's not here.
Yeah.
Sir, carry on, sir.
So coaches, you are very important part of this whole wheel of success. So let us work together in the best interest of our country. Please remember the three most important issues why we are not improving. One is overage, two is doping, and three is overtraining at a very early age. Please take care of these three issues, and I'm confident that medals at the Olympics will start coming. I thank you all for your participation. Please learn from the experts and please put it into practice. Thank you very much. Good luck.
N.S. Patiala. Just a minute, sir. Worker, can you unmute this?
Yeah.
Please, N.S. Patiala, unmute this.
He has to unmute himself. Can tell him to unmute himself.
Sir, can you unmute yourself, sir?
Yeah, thank you, Radha. Uh, thank you, President Sahab. It was a wonderful guidance to all these coaches. May I request Dr. Lalit to speak few words to all these coaches. Uh, Dr. Lalit Sahab.
Mr. Adil, the President of the Athletic Federation of India, Colonel Bishnoi, I have heard that Commander Rajgopalji is also here. It is a wonderful program which has been initiated by the DG Sai, and I congratulate them because they have realized what is the requirement of the coaches. You know, from many years we are mentioning it, and we are trying our efforts to see that we should have the best coaches, and that is one of the reasons that we have to go for the foreign coaches, because our knowledge of our coaches needs to be upgraded, and they need theoretical experience as well as the practical experience. So which I feel that the these coaches will get will be benefited by these type of courses which we are running. There are a number of courses which the President AFI has mentioned, and science has a vital role to play which everybody needs to understand. Unfortunate part here is that every person who is doing the coaching, he or she feels that they know everything. I think knowledge has no limit, and it continues till the death of a person. You try to, if you are interested, you can gain a lot of knowledge. And every day, the training methods are changing. If you will see that in the past few years, when the WADA and the NADA has taken up this job of to stop the forbidden substances, people used to think that the performances of the athletes will go down. But whereas the reality is something else. If you notice the result, what they achieved in the recently concluded World Championship at Doha, where we had 3 athletes who were close to 23-meter shot put, which were not achieved even during the period when the doping was very prominent and everybody knew that people are hiding, and then they will come with a good performance and then they again disappear. So that proves that the technical skill part and the training methods have more role than these medicines. One needs to understand it and they need to work it out. Because I have heard from many coaches who says without these forbidden substances, they cannot improve. But I am showing you an example of a shot put where most of the people in the past, I'm not saying everyone, were using the forbidden substance and they were enhancing their performance. When I spoke to many people at the international level, they says everybody was converted to only power, power, power. They forget the technique, they forget the training methods, so they were not able to achieve very good performance. What they achieved when they were totally clean, 3 people never in the history have reached in shot put 23 meters. So everyone has to understand that the forbidden substance has no role in today's athletics, and we have to get rid of all these things and we have to guide our athletes accordingly. Then the second issue which has been touched by the president is the overtraining. One drawback with our athletes are, it is like, when they get the athlete, they feel it is like uh, speed thrills, but it kills. So initially, if you give them a more training, they will initially perform well, but later on they will be finished, they will be nowhere. And the biggest problem which I can see is a lot of talented athletes have been killed by the coaches by giving them overtraining and with the lure of achieving the performance at an early stage. So we have to learn this thing that the athletes have to gradually go up according to their age, according to their capacity, according to their training age. So it is not that in one day you can achieve the highest performance. You have to gradually go up, and then the scientific backup has to be there. They have to understand the biomechanics, they have to understand the physiology, they have to understand the pharmaceutical, the requirement of nutrition. So everything the coach has to understand. It is not merely the training methods, it is the science also they have to understand. So I will only request the SAI that when they are even doing the NAS diploma, they must give more preference to now the science part, the biomechanics, the physiology, so chemistry, so that physics, they must understand what is athletics. We have interacted with so many people at the world level and the highest level of coaches. They know each and everything as physiology, which muscle is working, which muscles needs how much training. It is not generalized that everybody will do the same training. The training has to be very specific, keeping in mind the ability of the athlete and which muscles are working properly, which muscles are not working properly. Once again, I will thank the people who are involved in this, particularly the SAI and the Athletic Federation of India, taking this initiative. And Colonel, we have spoken to Colonel Vishnoi when I met him at Patiala. It appears that he is more interested to upgrade the standard of the coaches, and he has done that job. He has started in this difficult time. We are utilizing our time. People are taking interest, and I hope that in the coming time we will have very good coaches. Thank you very much.
Sir, you can unmute yourself, sir. You can unmute yourself. Sir, you can unmute yourself, sir. Sir, you can unmute yourself.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Banot. Everybody knows Dr. Banot's contribution to Athletic Federation of India, and he is very well summarized in his advice to all the coaches. We are thankful to Dr. Banot, and I think all these coaches will keep this thing in their mind while going under this training and when they are imparting this training to their athletes. Now, may I request Commander Rajagopala to give his mind about top athletes which is dealing as CO tops. Over to Rajagopala, sir.
Thank you, Colonel Vishnoi. Mr. Adil Sumariwala, Mr. President AFI, Dr. Lalit Banot, who requires no introduction. Anyone who is associated with Indian sport, athletics, of course, knows him very well. Colonel Bishnoi, Senior AD Patiala, Mr. Foka Homan, the High Performance Director, Mr. Radhakishan, and the esteemed faculty, and the distinguished coaches who are there on the program. It's really heartening to see such a large number for this program, which encourages, Sports Authority of India to conduct more such programs. I fully endorse what Mr. Sumariwala or Dr. Banot has said. And we at SAI believe that the program is always athlete-centric, but it is always coach-led program. And it is the coach who makes the athlete. And slowly and steadily, as the whole sporting ecosystem, we understand the importance of having a top-class coach who can make a top-class athlete and who can realize India's Olympic dream, as Mr. Sumariwala just mentioned. It's a difficult time for the country and the world as together. We are passing through a pandemic, and we thought at SAI that this is a great opportunity, see the positivity and use this opportunity positively as well as productively to enhance the knowledge base of our coaching fraternity. And on behalf of DG SAI, I would like to thank Mr. Sumariwala and his team and Dr. Banot for creating this program for all the coaches across India. I am sure in the days to come, with the knowledge which is dispensed and the exchange, I think this is a great platform for exchange of knowledge too, because I can see a lot of experienced ex-athletes who have converted to coaching and a lot of senior coaches part of the program. So it will be a great platform to exchange, notes. So therefore, I would like to thank AFI again for creating a program which would enhance and the knowledge skill of our coaches, and of course utilize this time productively. As Colonel Bishnoi said, when we handle athlete, our focus majorly remains coach driven. We always have a discussion, of course, with the federation first, and then the coach. It could be personal, it could be a team coach, to actually discuss the plan, because he's the one who's going to drive the program. And we, both Athletic Federation of India and SAI, believe that coaches has the most important role to play in an athlete's career. With that, I would like to, just thank and wish you all great success in this program. Hope that you utilize this program to upskill your knowledge. And as days go by, I think we will see more and more coaches joining once you spread it into your community and tell them the advantage of attending this program. I would also like to inform that I'm sure most of you may be aware, as Dr. Banot said, that sports science has a great importance, and therefore we thought that we would create a separate program for sports science, which is daily at 5 o'clock. And if somebody does not have through our network, we can send you the ID. It would be great that if you could attend those sessions also. I'm sure it will add to your knowledge. Thank you very much. Once again, President AFI and Dr. Banot for creating this program for us.
Vishnu sir, you can unmute your mic yourself. Vishnu sir, you can unmute your mic yourself.
You got the control. Yeah. No. Thank you so much to all our guests from Athletic Federation of India and Sports Authority of India. And now I would like to hand over the stage to Mr. Radha and Mr. Walker. They have to control these coaches, and I think they must give the do's and don'ts. And I request all the coaches to adhere to all the instructions passed by our faculty, because if they're not adhere to this, they will be wasting time and efforts of faculty which is there. And now over to Mr. Radha.
Thank you, sir. Today's program is on athletic development, long-term athletic development. It will be taken by Mr. Volker Herman, the High Performance Director. Also, we support him in some occasions. So I request Mr. Volker Herman to start your class.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome, coaches. I hope that this session finds you and, of course, your families fine. Thanks for the kind introduction to Mr. Adile and Dr. Banot. And special thanks, of course, to SAI, especially Mr. Sandeep Pradhan and Commander Rajagopalan and his team for the ongoing support, not only regarding this course, but also regarding the overall development of athletics in India. I will switch to our presentation right now. So I share my screen. You can adjust your own screen to follow the presentation. And if you have any questions, please use the chat function of the Zoom software. We have two of our coaches, Mr. Raj Mohan and Mr. Nagesh, who are trying to filter the questions so that after this session, that if we have some time available, that we can discuss your questions as well. So I'm going to share my screen now. And I hope it's clear, everyone, to see the first slide, athletes development. When we're talking about athletes development, we also have to understand who we are. Yeah? Athletics depends on actually 6 different event groups: distance running, sprinting, jumping, throwing, and race walking, and of course the multi-events. It means we have 6 different event groups which offer various options for every athlete, whether they are small, big, tall, skinny, or strong. Every athlete will find his niche. We have 48 disciplines, which equals 48 potential gold medals and 144 medals in athletics overall. Of course, this variety is a huge advantage, but we're also facing certain disadvantages. Since succeeding in one of these events requires a lot of specialization. There's not a single athlete in the world who's training and who's successful in sprinting and in throwing at the same time, or in distance running or race walking at the same occasion. So every world-class performance requires a lot of specific training. And if you are going to our junior championships, for example, the National Inter-District Junior Meeting Mr. Adila was referring to in the beginning, and if you talk to the young athletes and ask them about their sport, they will not reply by saying that they are doing athletics. Instead, they will explain that they are 400-meter sprinters, long jumpers, javelin throwers, and that already at a very young age. All of you, or most of you, have actually participated in the IAAF Level 1 course, and you know that we have different development stages. It starts with the athletic stage, followed by a multi-event stage, event group specialization, specialization, and performance stage. And if a 13 or 14-year-old kid is telling you that he or she is a javelin thrower rather than an athlete, we already know that they're experiencing this early specialization. When we're looking on the world map, the world population right now equals approximately 7.7 billion people. The Indian population is approximately 1.37 billion people, which accounts for 17.7% of the overall world population. So 17.7% of the overall population, despite that fact, we were only able to win a very limited amount of medals in the past. Maybe you remember yourself, India was able to win 4 medals at the under-20, the Junior World Championships, and only 1 medal at the under-18 Youth World Championships. And we have only 1 medal winner in the World Championships of the senior category, and that was Anju Bobby George in 2003 during the World Championships in Paris. I've heard that she's among the participants today, so I hope you, Anju, that you and Bobby and your daughter are fine. So we have to ask ourselves, what are the reasons for this development? Yeah, that we have such a huge country, but we are still lacking when it comes to the podium finishes. And after visiting a lot of different centers, in not only in Patiala, but in Trivandrum, in Bangalore, we went to Guntur. Together with our deputy chief coach, Mr. Radhakrishnan, we talked to a lot of coaches, including quite a number of you. We talked to athletes and officials. We came to understand that there are 6 main reasons. So the 3 our president already mentioned: the age fraud. We're also facing an early specialization, which in many cases will cause an early dropout, that athletes are not even maintaining with athletics until they reach the peak age. We have a situation where significant athletes are injured. And in India, that's very important to see that the physical aspects of training, like the strength and conditioning, with a lot of athletes are outshining the technical aspects, the technical development. Additionally, we are facing a missing individualization. And we have to engage the coaches in these discussions, what we're doing now. And because you are the ones who eventually have to apply all these principles on the ground. Just listening to a coaching course does not necessarily make you a better coach. You have to find a way to apply your knowledge. And within the next weeks, I hope that we will find a way to provide you with some more knowledge and that we're able to encourage you to rethink your training and to apply the new ideas on the ground in your districts, in your states. And the mindset, especially regarding doping, supplements, age fraud, of course, plays an important role in this process as well. Still, and that's the good news, we have plenty of talent. The number of gifted athletes in our junior camps is incredible. And I'm sure that there are thousands more out there, athletes we probably don't even know about right now. You will find a brief timeline for the next 8 years until the Olympic Games in 2028 here on the next slide. And you can see that we distinguish between competitions for the seniors as well as for the junior athletes. Of course, the postponement of the Olympic Games to 2021 actually makes the whole schedule more compact, so that means the planning will become a bit harder for our coaches. Still, what is important to understand that these athletes who are representing India in the 2024 Olympic Games are our current junior athletes. and the athletes who are representing India in 2028 are currently of the age of 15, 16, maybe even younger years old. That means some of them might not be even involved in athletics right now. And it's your task to identify these athletes on the ground and to carefully develop them so that they're able not only to participate in Olympic Games or World Championships, but also to succeed, to win medals. And this requires 3 different approaches. Of course, for the Olympic Games in Tokyo 2020, it's mainly the national athletes who are currently training or who are currently trying to train despite the circumstances to succeed in Tokyo. For Paris 2024, which means we have another 4 years of training, it's the current high performance athletes and our youth and junior athletes. And in 8 years' time, again, it's the current youth and junior athletes and our future talents, which probably have not even been identified at the moment. I just want to share a short video with you. And this video was taken in Trivandrum at the national camp over there. And you see a group of long jumpers and triple jumpers training together. First of all, they are very talented young athletes. But at the same time, you can also see that there are 3 coaches, 1 physiotherapist, and there were a few more coaches standing in the background, and they're obviously working together. And that for me was a real eye-opener, because in India we are facing a situation where a lot of coaches, they do talk more about each other rather than instead of talking to each other. And what I really liked about this video, that coaches here were working together, supporting each other and having discussions and also encouraging each other. And that's exactly the way it has to be. If India wants to be successful on a sporting nation, not only in athletics, we have to align ourselves. And there are no secrets in athletics any longer. You can read thousands of articles online. You can view millions of videos on YouTube and Instagram. There are no hidden aspects of training. Knowledge in general becomes less important. The coaching skills are getting more important. And that's something we will intensify and discuss with you over the next days. Someone is actually painting a lot of graphs. Can you please stop that? This is, who has done this? Can you see this? Can you see these scratches? Yes. Please undo it. Yeah. This is from somewhere else. So when we talk about athletes development, we're talking about 3 different aspects. We have the so-called psychosocial development, meaning mental, emotional, or cognitive development. We have the development of motor skills and technique from a rough model throughout a basic model to an advanced model. And we have the physical conditioning aspects of training. Again, we have to ensure that we are developing our athletes in a holistic way. Yeah, it's not only about making the athletes more powerful, increasing the endurance of our athletes, it's also about developing the technique. Yeah? In addition, we have to understand the athlete's mental well-being. We have to develop a very strong mindset from our athletes. And this is called physical literacy, that the athletes develop a certain understanding of their sport and that they develop a good perception of what they're doing. This physical literacy is eventually the foundation of both participation in sports as well as an excellence in physical performances. And individuals who are physically literate are more likely to be active for life, which means it has a huge impact not only on the performance aspect, but also on the healthcare system, which especially in a country of India's size might become very important. And again, it's your responsibility as the coaches to develop the athletes gradually and with a lot of patience. When we're talking about athletes development, we always have to distinguish between talent development and high performance training. Kids are not miniature adults. We have to apply completely different rules, completely different principles when we're talking about talent development. A lot of coaches, what they're doing, they're trying to Google for Usain Bolt's training program, and they just cut it down by 30% and they're applying it to the young athletes. But I guarantee you that does not work. There were many examples also in India where coaches try to apply that. And you probably know this young boy, Udya Singh, I think, who was hyped all around Asia, who, if I read it correctly, did 40 marathons by the age of 5. Today, I think he's around 20 years old. And I think it's quite a long time ago that he did his last race. Yeah, so we have to develop our athletes carefully using age-related training methods. And we have to avoid a situation where we're forcing our athletes into an early specialization. It should not be our goal to develop medal winners at a JUICE or junior stage. It should be our main objective to develop medal winners at a senior stage. Athletes who are not just representing the states of the districts, but athletes who are representing the country in Olympic Games, in World Championships, and who are succeeding at these events. Athletics is a so-called late development sport in comparison to gymnastics, figure skating, or even swimming, for example. And the speed of a child growth has a major impact for its training, because children who mature at an early age often have a huge advantage compared to average or late maturers, especially when they're doing, especially during the training stage. Here in this overview, you can see the average performance development of different athletes. The blue line represents athletes who eventually, at the peak of their career, made it to the top 30 in Asia. The gray line indicates the same for the top 30 athletes in the world. And the orange line you can see here, that represents the top 100 athletes in Asia, who know, or who we know eventually they will be not as fast as the top 30 in Asia, and of course the top 30 in Asia is a bit slower than the top 30 in the world. Interestingly, what we can see here, that these athletes who eventually make it to the top 100 at the age of 15 or 16 are much faster than these athletes who eventually end up in the top 30. At the age of 16, they're even faster than world-class athletes. So what does it mean for us? It simply means that if an athlete in the age of 15 or 16 is doing extraordinarily well, it is not necessarily an indicator of his talent. And these athletes often are early specialized, and they show a very huge stagnation afterwards. And you can see the other two groups, they're still developing, they're improving their performance from one year to the next, from the age of 15 until the age of maybe 25, 26. Whereas these athletes, they're not really able to improve any longer. And the reason for that is, again, this early specialization. And there were some sports scientists who compared senior world-class athletes and who looked, what did these athletes do when they were young? What did these athletes do when they were 15 or 16 years old? And it was very clear that these athletes who eventually made it to the top in the world, they started their main sport later. Yeah, and it's meaning that a moderate main sport practice intensity. They also had a lot of experience in other sports, particularly before they started their main sports. And they had involvement in these sports over more years. And that's actually a sign for later specialization. So again, it should not be our goal to focus on developing or making our 15, 16 years old athletes as strong as possible. It should be the goal to enable our athletes to peak at the right time. And that means at the age of around 23 to 25, because athletics is a late development sport. And now I would like to pass the mic to Mr. Radhakrishnan to share some of the local examples.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. In fact, we have right example in front of us, those who have done more practicing in other sports, particularly before the start of the main sport. For example, Neeraj Chopra. Neeraj Chopra was playing volleyball, he was playing cricket, he was playing kabaddi, where he started holding the javelin at the age of 16, 17. And the other case is Hima Das. Hima Das, up to the age of 16, 17, she was playing football and she was playing all the sport. She has never worn spikes and ran. So there are so many examples like VK Vismaya, who are all now doing good performance and showing good performance they all did not specialize their sports at the age of 15 or 14. They started, for example, with Vismaya joined his sister, younger sister, to a sports school. She was not an athlete. Only as a support staff, she came to the school with her younger sister. But now she is a star, but his younger sister is where she was. Anyway, these are some local examples which we have. Thank you, Herman. We can join. You can continue.
Thank you, Mr. Radhakrishnan. So instead of early specialization, yeah, we have to actually avoid that. Because if you specialize early in a single sport, like athletics, there's a high chance that we're dealing with one-sided sport-specific preparations, which creates a lack of some boredom. It also creates a lack of ABCs, agility, balance, and coordination, which means poor basic movements and poor fundamental sport skills. It results in an overuse, in a massive amount of overuse injuries, in an early burnout, and an early retirement from training and competition. And that's exactly what we can observe with a lot of our Indian athletes, that they're doing particularly well at the age of 16 or 17, but when they're turning 18 or 19, often they're retiring from sports and not able, because of injuries, or willing, because of mental issues, to continue their sports career. So instead of supporting an early specialization, we have to avoid that and to support an early diversification. That means we have to expose our kids, our talents, our athletes to as many sports or movements as possible. Because by doing so, we're able to work on the fundamentals. And I use this picture of a skyscraper because all of you know, if you start building a skyscraper, if you start developing your talent, a potential medal winner, you always have to start working on the fundament, on the basement. If you don't build a proper fundament for your athlete, eventually the skyscraper or your athlete might collapse. With a first heavy storm, with a small earthquake probably. And it's exactly the same with our athletes. We have to build a very strong base, a very strong fundament for them, not only to overcome difficulties, but also to avoid injuries and to enable them to reach a very, very high performance level of athletics disciplines. For our junior athletes, it means we have to focus on the weaknesses before you affect the strengths. If you're dealing with a 14 or 15-year-old boy, it's more important for these coaches and athletes to work on the individual weaknesses. And when the athlete is turning older, it's better to focus on the strengths of these athletes. And please, whoever this is, please stop painting in our presentation. Yeah? So all physical abilities are trainable throughout the childhood and adolescence, even though the adaptive response might be different due to different maturational statuses. What does that mean? We need to ensure that we are covering all motor skills, all biomotor abilities at the same time. And that means we have to offer a huge variety. We should implement other sports like basketball, rope skipping, even some local catching games, for example, in our training program. And athletics is a perfect sport to do that. You don't have to run, jump, or throw continuously at every single session. Yeah, we can easily implement basketball session as a kind of warm-up, for example. We can easily implement gymnastic session to increase the motor skills, ball games, rope skipping, whatever you want to do. At a young age, all these movements are contributing to the later development of our talents. And again, as wider this variety is, as more sports you're implementing into your athletics program, as better developed will be the physical literacy, and it will be a huge benefit regarding the long-term development of these athletes. And this, of course, affects all biomotor abilities. By biomotor abilities, we're talking about speed, strength, endurance, flexibility, and the motor skills. Yeah, we want to make our athletes faster, stronger. We want to increase their stamina, their flexibility, and we want to improve the coordination. With young athletes, it's of utmost importance that you're covering all of these motor skills in your weekly training sessions. With the more senior athletes, the more experienced performance athletes, it might be that you set certain priorities, that you focus on more speed and strength work with the sprinter, that you focus on more endurance work and flexibility with your marathon runner, that you focus more on motor skills and strengths with your javelin throwers. But at a young age, it's crucial that we expose our athletes to all these motor skills to provide a huge variety and a holistic development of the physical as well as technical and coordinative abilities. So I want to share this video with you and just think about what is the purpose of using it. So I think the message here is quite clear. I already mentioned that when you go to a JUICE or junior competition in India, that we see a lot of very powerful athletes. We have extraordinary performances, and the medal winners often look extremely strong. Yeah, you can see a lot of muscles, bulky muscles, but at the same time, we realize that the technical level is relatively low. And that's what I try to show with this video. It's not about the strengths. Yeah, it's about the technique. You can develop a very strong athlete, but if this athlete has a poor technique, it will not help him necessarily. It's because the technique always helps you to apply your strengths, to apply your endurance, the motor skills in general. And in India, we are facing a situation where the physical aspects of conditioning are outshining individual technical aspects. And this is something we have to avoid. So please keep in mind, and that's one of the take-home messages for today, always develop strengths and technique, or the conditioning aspects and technical and coordinative aspects alongside each other. You cannot neglect one of the abilities. It's not about how hard you hit it, it's about using the right technique. And you all know from the level 1 courses that the plasticity of your brain is reduced with age. So especially with the young athletes, it's extremely important, again, that we develop good motor skills and already a very nice basic technical model for as many athletics disciplines as possible. Yeah, we need to concurrently develop all motor skills with the young athletes, interdependent and then later on, we are applying an advanced model. For example, when we talk about a young hurdler, in the beginning, you probably just teach them how to use their trail leg or how to take off into the hurdle. Once they're able to cover these technical details, you're combining them into more complex sequences. For example, clearing the hurdle with a trail leg and doing 3 or 5 steps in between the hurdles. Once the athletes are not dealing with any problems of this exercise any longer, then you go ahead to the advanced model where they're actually clearing the hurdle. So try to break the movement down and always start your technique training with the main acceleration phase of your respective discipline. That might be the sprint start and acceleration. For the jumpers, it's usually the takeoff because this is where the main acceleration is happening. For the throws, it always starts with the power position until the release. Yeah, so try to break it down and ensure that your athletes reach a very decent technical level before you continue developing the conditioning aspects. Dr. Banot, in his opening speech, already mentioned this example of the male shot putters. Here in this graph, you can see the development over the last 20 years in the male shot put. And despite more intensified doping tests, which makes it much harder for the athletes to cheat, yeah, we can see that the performance, especially in the last 6-7 years, is increasing rapidly. And Dr. Banot already mentioned that the main reason for that is an individualization of training, as well as a technical improvement. Previously, a lot of throwing coaches said that the rotational technique is mainly used by small throwers to overcome the physical disadvantages in comparison to the tall athletes. But nowadays, if you see the medal winners at the World Championships in Doha 2019, they are all relatively tall, but still dealing with an extremely good technique. Yeah, so this is just another example to underline the necessity of developing strengths and technique at the same time. You cannot sacrifice one aspect for the other. Yeah, just to find another example, in music, it's not about how hard you're pulling the different strings. It's actually to find a perfect combination of the different tones to create a nice melody. And that's exactly what we have to do in training. Yeah, each string represents a different ability, represents technique, represents coordination. And only if you combine them in a nice and sufficient way, you will eventually be able to develop a good melody or a nice song. I've already mentioned these different stages of athletes' development. We're talking about kids athletics, fundamentals. Yeah, we need a lot of fun, and at the same time, we have to create a very strong base. Afterwards, according to World Athletics, the athletes are supposed to transfer into the multi-event stage, where you're not just doing a long jump, for example, but where you're doing a lot of different events. The young kids should be exposed to sprinting, jumping, throwing, almost with every training session. Because the main purpose of this case, or this phase, is to learn to train. They have to get used to a certain amount of training, to a certain structure in training, but again, by being exposed to a huge variety. Afterwards, they start the event group specialization, where we train to train. That's actually where we start preparing the athlete for later high performance training. And this event group specialization usually does not start before the age of 16 or 17. The specialization phase afterwards begins usually at the age of around 18 or 19, where we train to compete, where for the first time we're preparing the athletes for competition. Following the international governing body, World Athletics, it means that we have to wait with this specialization until the age of 18 or 19. In India, again, we are facing a situation that our athletes are already specializing in the age of 14, 15. And I think it becomes quite evident that this is not the way to go. We have to be patient and we have to think of the long-term development so that our athletes eventually, from the age of 21, 22 onwards, are able to train to win once they reach the performance stage. Yeah, train the right things at the right time. Of course, this depends not only on the age of the athlete. Yeah, on the left picture, you can see two boys, both of the age 13. The chronological age might be the same. Yeah, chronological age means when has the athlete been born? What is his calendaric age? The biological age describes the physical maturity of these athletes. Children with the same chronological age can differ by several years regarding their biological maturation level. Yeah, so obviously, the athlete on the right has a much higher biological age than the athlete on the left. And usually we're talking about a delay of plus minus 2 years. Yeah, where the boy on the left looks a bit more like 11-year-old. The one on the right appears to be 15 almost. In addition, we have the so-called developmental age, which describes a complex interaction between physical, emotional, psychological, and social development. So this is more regarding mental development. Just because the guy on the right side looks like 15, he might still have the developmental age of an 11-year-old boy. And last but not least, we have the so-called training age. The training age just describes the individual experience an athlete has with a specific or planned training in any sport. And your training programs, of course, they have always to be adjusted according to the biological age, the developmental age, and the training age. To understand more about the developmental age and sensitive periods of optimal trainability, we have to understand about the maturity in boys and girls and how it's going to happen. Most of you will know that girls are usually earlier matured in comparison to the boys. And the best way to detect this is to actually measure the height of the athlete regularly. If you are dealing with athletes between the age of 12 to 16, I would advise you to regularly measure the height of your athletes to identify two events. One is a so-called onset of the growth spurt. The second one is a PHV, the so-called peak height, velocity. The growth spurt describes this first area of the curve, when out of the sudden, the athlete starts growing rapidly. It's a massive vertical growth of body height. You can see in the early years, the athletes are probably developing or increasing by 6 centimeters, and out of the sudden, they start to grow by 7, 8, sometimes up to 9 or 10 centimeters each year. And for girls, this usually starts between the age of 11 to 13. For boys, if you compare it here with the blue chart, it's a bit later, from 13 to 15. So this is when the onset of growth spurts start, when the body is rapidly growing. After a certain time, they reach the peak height velocity. And this describes the highest amount of growth during puberty. To know about the onset of growth spurt and peak height velocity is important because it's related to maximum strength training and endurance training. Regarding endurance, you can start a structured endurance training, aerobic endurance training, with the onset of the growth spurt. That means for the girls, usually at the age of 12, 13, for the boys, probably around the age of 13, 14. When we're talking about maximum strength training, we have to even differentiate between boys and girls. Yeah, the girls should start a structured strength training immediately after they reach the peak height velocity or during the onset of menarche. For the boys, it's a bit different. They should start a structured strength training 12 to 18 months after they reach the peak height velocity. That means a structured strength training, for example, we have to start this with our athletes for the girls a bit earlier, maybe around the age of 13, 14. For the boys, usually around 14, 15. Yeah, according, again, to this growth spurt here. And if you, once in a month, measure the height of your athlete, you can easily calculate the onset of the growth spurt as well as the peak height velocity. And it helps you to individualize your training, and it also helps you to avoid early specialization. By talking about maximum strength training, of course, we don't mean to use heavy weights for our athletes. You don't have to do, or you should not do, a 1 or even 2 or 3 repetition maximum. We have to find with the young kids other ways of strength training. Mainly hypertrophy oriented strength training, maybe 10 to 15 repetitions, probably even starting with a kind of strength endurance training before developing power or speed strengths. But to start with a proper strength training at the age of 13 or 15, we need to develop a decent base of core strength before that. Basic exercises with the athlete's own body weight can already be introduced at the age of 9 or 10. And they become of particular importance once the growth spurts set in, because out of the sudden, the lever arms of our athletes are changing. The legs are getting longer, the arms are getting longer, and the whole coordination will be changed. Because of this, we need more muscle mass or more muscle strength to support our body. Yeah? If you're growing in height, you also have to increase your strength. So to better prepare the athletes of this difficult phase of height growth, we have to introduce a proper core strength training already at the age of 9 to 10 to continuously build it up before adding maximum strength and a proper endurance training at the right time. When we're talking about endurance, we have to avoid anaerobic training before the age of 18. That's another aspect we are facing in India, that a lot of coaches are using a lot of lactic workouts. Young kids, unfortunately, not able to deal with these lactic workouts. They need a long time to recover from these workouts. So to avoid this early specialization, please avoid intensive tempo runs with your athletes before they reach the age of 18. For 2 reasons. First, we have to focus on a speed development. And second, it will significantly increase the recovery times of your athletes. Yeah, so when we're talking about core strength training, constantly affected all the way to high performance. And it can be simple exercises, yeah, like elements from gymnastics, using some rings or even some parks maybe outside These are all things you can easily implement in your training. You don't even need a specific equipment. And then eventually it should look like this. I think you all know this guy. It's Tajinder Pal Tour, our shot putter. And here he's doing a bench press with 240 kg. 3 repetitions. It's extremely powerful, as strong as the best shot putters in the world. But you have to understand that it took him a long time to reach this level. As a rule of thumb, approximately 8 years are required to develop a sufficient maximum strength level. Knowing that your athletes are very close to their peak age at the age of 23 or 24, you need to start a well-structured strength training relatively early. Again, for the girls after reaching the peak height velocity, or for the boys 12 to 18 months after reaching the PhD. And now again, I want to ask Mr. Radhakrishnan to explain a bit about Tajinder Pal Tour's development throughout the last years. What was crucial in his development?
Thank you, Volker. In fact, in 2018, he has done 20.90, but in this last one and a half year, he has tremendously improved his strength as well as speed and also the technique. So now it is right in front of us. He is doing 21.50 in the most of the competition. So what is that exactly? What Mr. Walker said, the strength and speed, and also the technique will definitely improve the performances. That's all, Mr. Walker.
Thank you very much. So when we're talking about age-related training, yeah, it is clear that training has to become more specific with increasing training age. You also have to work on the fundamentals in the beginning to enable specific training. If you start with a specific training and you don't possess the necessary fundament, again, there's a very high chance that your athletes will be dealing with injuries. Yeah? If you think of a skyscraper, you would never ever come to the idea to start building the 10th or 11th floor first. You always start with the fundament, followed by the basement, followed by the first floor. And that's exactly the steps we have to take with our athletes as well. There is no shortcut, and a fundamental base is essential for long-term development. For us as coaches, often it's not that easy because we have to be very patient. And I know that all of you are desperate to develop successful athletes, and we really appreciate that. But it must be our common goal to develop these athletes who are successful at the age of 23 or 24. If you're developing an athlete who is winning the national juice championships at the age of 16 or 17, the chances for this athlete not to be successful at the age of maybe 20, 21, once they reach the senior stage, are actually much higher than the chances that these athletes will be successful. Yeah, so athletes who are in the age of 16, 17, who are successful, in most cases, will never reach a successful senior stage. And this is one of the reasons why World Athletics, or previously IAAF, decided not to conduct the World Juice Championships any longer, because too many athletes dropped out from athletics, and less than 0.2% of the participants in World Juice Championships eventually made it to World Senior Championships. So in general, general contents always provide an appreciated and necessary alternative to more specific contents and allow more recovery in between intensive sessions. And recovery, as you know, becomes a critical factor regarding the density of our intensive training sessions. And you can see this table here. At the first stage, at the age of 14, 15, most international athletes are only training 3 to 4 sessions of general contents a week and 1 specific sessions. That means the most athletes worldwide only conduct 4 or 5 sessions. If you see the Indian athletes, I'm pretty sure that 90% of you will follow the typical structure that you have double sessions on Monday and Tuesday, as well as on Thursday and Friday, and you have only 1 single session on Wednesday and Saturday. If you are conducting 10 sessions with a 14 or 15-year-old girl or boy, the chances that you're spoiling these athletes are very, very high. So please reconsider this idea. Yeah, it's not, we don't say that you have to do only 4 sessions. But if you conduct more sessions, probably use some afternoon sessions to mainly work on flexibility, coordination, and implement other sports. As you can see here, at the age of 14, 15, usually the athletes are conducting 3 to 4 general sessions and only 1 specific sessions. So even if you know you have an athlete who is very good in the horizontal jumps, let's say in the long jump, that you do not conduct more than 1 long jump session a week. Instead, you do a lot of speed training, you do a lot of gymnastics, you do a lot of core strengths, expose them to ball games, again, to increase the variety of your training. And interestingly, this amount of general sessions stays more or less the same throughout an athlete's career. It's just the number of specific sessions which is increasing. So from the age of 16, 17, you probably add 1 specific session, so you have 3 to 4 general and 2 specific sessions. In the age of 19, again, you have 3 to 4 general sessions, but out of a sudden you are dealing with 3 specific sessions, and so on. So even a world-class athlete is not conducting more than 4 to 5 specific sessions, but they're maintaining these general sessions throughout their career. So please reconsider the amount of specific sessions you're conducting with your athlete and try to focus a bit more on the general development. When we're talking about development, of course, we're mainly talking about our talents. And this is another very interesting study which has been conducted by some Italian sports scientists in 2017. And their findings suggest that performances before the age of 16 are not a good predictor of adult performances in long and high jump. And I can assure you it is the same with all the other events too. So coaches should be very careful about predicting future success based on performances obtained during JUICE in jumping events. As coaches, we have to be patient and we have to understand what are the critical skills we have to develop for future international successes. And again, if an athlete is not dealing with a fundamental base, you are actually disabling him from becoming a successful senior athlete and to successfully represent India in international championships. It also means that an athlete in the age of 16 or 17, which is very successful already, again, most likely will not be a successful athlete at the senior stage any longer. We have to identify the right talents, and the talent identification has to focus rather on the abilities, rather on the skills. Sorry, the talent identification has to focus on the abilities rather than the skills. And one good example I want to use, for example, is Duty Chand. If you compare Duty's performance at the age of 14, 15, and 16, you can see that she was doing quite well, but in the age of 15, for example, her season's best was only 12.2, which is much slower than any top athlete in Asia or top athlete in the world. Again, you can see this orange line represents top 30 athletes in Asia. The blue line represents top 30 in the world. The yellow line, these are the season's best of Duty Chand, and the green line, just for statistical analysis purposes, represents the top 3 average of her timings per season. And again, at the age of 15, you can see she did not do particularly well. And maybe she would not have been selected for a talent identification development program. Then out of a sudden, here, the best almost by 0.4 of a second. And in the next year, from 16 to 17, by another 0.2 of a second. And this is actually the best indicator of talents. It's not just the performance in one particular year. It's about how much are these athletes able to improve themselves. And when you conduct a talent identification, and these are some tests we developed together with the Sports Authority of India, don't just look for the performance in competition. Look for the abilities. Your athlete does not have to run 100 meters very fast. Instead, they should have a good acceleration. They should be able to show a nice frequency, and a good ability to apply power or speed strengths. So here we have another example for 400 meter sprinters. Yeah, again, it's a development within the last 20 years. And here you can see as well, despite the very strict doping controls, the performance level is going up. Of course, it's similar to the development of the shot putters. Yeah, that the technique is improving, but what we find in the 400 meters is actually an improved speed level of our athletes. Improved speed and more individualization among the different athletes. So speed and technique become the limiting factors for all events, maybe excluding the middle and long distances. And what we're experiencing in India is that a lot of speed endurance is done, but no speed training. So a lot of coaches conduct tempo runs, maybe 100 meter, 120 meter, 150 meter, already with young athletes. But we know that every load, which is longer than 6 seconds, develops the athletes into the wrong direction. Because every human being, and that's interesting, whether they're 10 years old or 20 or 30 years, whether they're male or female, is only able to accelerate and to reach the maximum velocity after 6, maybe 6.2 seconds. And this is pretty much in line with the so-called adenosine and creatine phosphate system. So after 6 seconds, deceleration sets already in. And if you're conducting a 120 meter run with your 14 or 15-year-old girl, most likely it will take her approximately 15, 16 seconds to cover these 120 meters. Knowing that you're only able to accelerate for 6 seconds, we know that she spends the rest of the time, the remaining 9 or 10 seconds, decelerating. That means your athlete, if you conduct a lot of tempo runs with the young athletes, is spending more time decelerating than she's accelerating. And that's, of course, something we have to avoid because we need to develop the speed first.
Volker, sorry, Volker, can you show the previous slide once again?
Pardon?
Can you show the previous slide once again?
Yes. Yeah, we can also share this presentation with you afterwards, of course, and especially this test for talent identification.
Okay, you can go next.
So we see the 400 meter development, we see the athletes are getting better, and that's again due to a high amount of speed, higher technical levels, and an individualized approach in training. This is an analysis, and we compared the 400 meter times of the top 30 men in the world 2018, and we compared it with their 200 meter season's best. And you can see, if you see this plotted line here, that if you want to have an athlete or to develop an athlete who is able to run below 45 seconds, on average, these athletes, they have to be able to run below 20.8 seconds on 200 meters. And we don't have that many sprinters in India who are currently able to do that. If you want to run even faster, if you want to run below 44 seconds, you need to have a 200 meter personal best or season's best of approximately 20.4 seconds. Yeah, and again, none of our 400 meter runners is currently able to do that. So our 400 meter runners, a lot of them are actually too slow. Our 800 meter runners, for them it's more or less the same. They are too slow on the 400 meters. The 1500 meter runners, except Jensen Johnson, are too slow on the 800 meters. What do we learn from that? It simply means that we have to focus more on the speed. And the speed side, that's something we have to develop with our young kids. And you as coaches, you have to avoid doing lactic workouts before the age of 18 and focus more on the pure speed development, and maybe after the age of 13 or 14, 15 for the boys on the development of general endurance. So emphasize on speed, because speed ultimately becomes the limiting factor in all events, except the middle long distance and race walking disciplines. Even in the shot put or the discus throw or the javelin throw, the release speed of the implement will become the performance limiting factor. And development of pure speed becomes crucial at younger ages. So already with the 7 to 10-year-old kids, we have to conduct a lot of nonlinear COD, means change of direction, speed training. And from the age of 11 to 14, we're continuing with this kind of speed training, but we include linear sprints. Linear sprints just means running on the straight. And at the age of 15 to 16, you're still focusing on this linear speed, but again, only up to 6 or 7 seconds, because every other load, if it's going to be longer, will increase the amount of lactic acid, and this becomes, at least at this stage, a disadvantage. So a lot of coaches, what they have to do not follow specific distances. Do not tell your athletes to do 3 times 50 meter in training. Ensure that you, when you're planning your program, that you're that you're being inside this time range. Yeah, so you say 3 times 6 seconds maximum effort, rather than 3 times 50 meter running as fast as possible. Because the duration of these 6 to 7 seconds will become important. Yeah, always consider the 6-second rule, plan your training based on times, not according to the distances. When we're talking about the development of speed and motor skills, and this is one of the other factors in training. Training nowadays, it's much more focusing on quality rather than quantity. In India, we still see that a lot of coaches conducting a lot of sessions. Even for the young kids, what I mentioned, we often have 10 sessions every week. But you have to believe us if you're saying that it's not the quantity of your sessions, it's the quality of your sessions which become the limiting factor. And I really like this quote from a former sprinter from the United States. He was saying that every morning in Africa, a gazelle wakes up and it knows it must move faster than the lion or it will not survive. At the same time, every morning a lion wakes up and it knows it must move faster than the slowest gazelle or it will starve. So you know that the lion as well as the gazelle, they're always going all out. When they're chasing or when they're running away, they're not thinking, okay, today we're doing it in 80% or 85%. They're going at 100%. And this is the best way to develop not only your speed, but all the qualities. Whatever skill or drill you are affecting in training, we always have to ensure that we reach a high quality. And which you combine this high quality, strength and coordination will equal speed and power. This is something we're going to introduce in the next days with you again. So quality over quantity. Yeah, and I really like this quote that only perfect practice makes perfect. So don't just train for the sake of training. Quality over quantity includes every single exercise. The drills your athletes are doing, everything has to fulfill a purpose. And if you as a coach are not able to legitimate certain aspects of your training, it's better to get rid of them. Yeah, you have to be 100% aware what is the objective, what is the purpose of every single minute of your training. Of course, this is slightly different again for the endurance events, because in the endurance event, we also have to develop aerobic capacity, we have to develop a decent VO2 max, and that requires a certain volume. But for all other events, follow this quality approach and try not to think of how much you want to train, think of how well your athletes are going to train. And another very important thing to conclude these sessions, whatever you're doing in training, ensure your athletes have fun. And that's the same for 10-year-olds as it is for world-class 400-meter runners, as you can see here in one of the beautiful beaches of Kerala. Thank you very much. I hope you found this session somehow constructive, and we are opening the panel for some questions now. So I would like to ask Raj Mohan maybe to present, and Nagesh to present some of the questions to us. Did you have any questions?
Good evening, sir. Thanks a lot for a wonderful lecture, sir. So only one question I have received.
please clear again about anaerobic training before 18 years of age. This question was asked by Gurveer Singh, athletic coach.
Yeah, the problem is if you're conducting intensive tempo sessions before the age of 18, where you produce a lot of lactic acid, the first problem is that most of the athletes need a long time to recover from these sessions. Yeah, especially when we're talking about young kids in the age of 14 to 17, it takes them approximately sometimes up to 6-7 days to fully recover from such a session. And of course, this will impact the additional training sessions in the following days. And one of the most important things we have to do as coaches is to avoid a so-called accumulated fatigue. So when you start your training session on Tuesday, you should ensure that your athletes, especially with the young ones, are more or less fully recovered from the Monday session. If you're conducting a speed endurance session or special endurance session, like 100 meter, 120 meter tempo runs, yeah, you will deal with tired athletes for the next 5-6 days. So this is one reason why we have to avoid that. The young athletes need much more time to recover from the lactic acid sessions. Additionally, before the age of 18, we are still working on developing the fundamental aspects. Fundamentals means we have to increase the aerobic capacity of these athletes. Aerobic capacity mainly means the number of mitochondria, the size of your heart, for example. And lactic acid for some athletes might have a negative impact on this development of aerobic capacity. So since the focus is more on a general development, we have to avoid specific contents. And having anaerobic, lactic sessions is definitely a very specific drill for our athletes, or a very specific exercise. So that's the reason we have to avoid that. Yeah, in the young athletes, we're working on the fundamentals, general endurance. And once your athletes reach the age of 18, then you can slowly introduce these intensive aspects. Before that, even talented 400 meter sprinters, they will develop very well if you just focus on speed and on general endurance. Believe me, you do not need to conduct lactic sessions. And I know that some of our coaches, 70-80% are actually sessions where they deal with a high amount of lactic acid.
Thanks a lot, sir. The next question is how to measure peak height velocity. You have already elaborated this during the session. Can you please elaborate once more, sir?
Yeah, the peak height velocity, you just measure the height of the athlete. Let's say you start doing it with your athletes maybe by 1st of June, and let's say your athlete is 1.50 meters tall. It's a young girl, 13 years old, 1.50 meters. Then on 1st July, you measure her again, and she's 1.52 meters. Yeah, in August, you do it again, and she's 1.53 meters. So you can track the height progression over the months. And then you will get a curve similar to the one I've shown to you. And if you see that there is a rapid inclination of this curve, you see, okay, this is a onset, or the onset, sorry, of your growth. If this curve reaches a peak, you know, okay, this is a peak height velocity. And that's for the girls, again, exactly this moment where you start strength training. And for the boys and the girls, that's the moment where you start an aerobic endurance training without lactic acid.
Volker, there are some questions on the chat.
Yeah, we're doing that actually, I think.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, if you have any question, please feel free to post it on the chat right now. We still have a few minutes left.
So the next question is, how to identify if a particular training session is becoming overtraining with regards to younger athletes below 14 years of age?
So you're asking about the symptoms of fatigue. Yeah, and I can just strongly encourage you to register for one of the AFI's level 1 courses, because we're spending one entire session identifying these symptoms of fatigue. But in general, of course, if you see that your athletes are getting tired, if they're not motivated any longer, if the face is getting a bit white around the mouth and the nose, yeah, these are symptoms of fatigue. And this is exactly the point where you should stop your training, or where at least you have to give them sufficient recovery.
Thank you, sir. Next question is from Anjana. Is there any age of athlete the 6-second rule should be applied in speed training?
Yeah, that's a funny thing. This 6 seconds rule I just mentioned, it's the same whether you're 13 years old or 33. It's the same for youth athletes as it is for senior athletes. If you do an analysis of the final of the World Championships, for example, it will be the same. Every human being, if it's going for full effort, will reach the peak velocity at approximately 6 to 6.2 seconds. I'm pretty sure our president, Mr. Adil, agrees with that, being a sprinter himself. Yeah. So it is important, if you want to develop the speed, that you stay within this time frame of 6 to maximum 7 seconds, because afterwards, your athletes definitely start decelerating. And if you want to improve the speed, of course, we try to avoid deceleration, because it's not a speed training, it becomes a speed endurance training. And if you're doing too much speed endurance training, longer than 7 seconds, you're not making your athlete faster, you're actually encouraging them to make them slower. And this is also one of the reasons you will see why AFI reduced some of the distances for our juice competitions. Yeah, it does not really make sense for a 13-year-old girl to run 100 meters because it takes approximately 15, 16 seconds. If you reduce this distance to 60 meters, for example, yeah, we're reducing the amount of time they're spending during the race, and we're making it more sufficient towards speed development.
Thank you, sir. What is the best age for maximum strength development training?
Yeah, I think the question you have to ask yourself is, what is the best age to start a strength development training? And again, that depends on the peak height velocity. Girls should start a structured strength training. That means maybe with some easy exercises, a leg press, for example, not with a high weight, but just to get used to the machine. Once they reach this peak height velocity, boys, due to the testosterone level, they should start a bit later, like 1 year up to 18 months after they reach this peak height velocity. And then you gradually start developing them. When we're talking about strength training, we will do that later this month. Yeah, we will share more examples with you. It's very important that you gradually build up the strength of your athletes and that you don't rush them, because this again will lead to injuries.
Thanks, sir. I think the questions are over. Valuable questions are over now, sir.
Yeah, then thanks a lot from my side.
Mr. Walker, before concluding, I'd like to remind our coaches, as Walker has a long class on athletic development, but you must remember, for an athlete to reach his high performance, high peak performance, it takes 10,000 hours of training. Generally, what we are seeing with our coaches, we finish this 10,000 hours of training by 18, 19 years. Because it was very interesting for me. This year, we had a level 1 course. So in that, we asked one group to make a microcycle program for 14-year-old boy. It was very interesting. In training age, he has written 5 years. That means out of what we call this 10,000 hours, it is about 8 to 9 years. My coach has finished 5 years by 14 years of age. So that is what Mr. Walker spoke. Please don't finish the training at the age of 17. And it is very interesting, some of our coaches, leading coaches, are conducting 22 sessions for a child of 15 years of age. 22 sessions. It's something very, as we said, it's not more than 3 or 5 sessions, but 22 sessions. 22 hours of training. So if they train at the age of 14 or 15, 22 hours of training in a week, we cannot expect anything from that athletes. So please don't try to make champion at the age of 17 or 18. Let us all work together. AFI, Sports Authority of India, our high performance director, we all are working developing coaches, because without developing coaches, you can't develop athletes. So in 2028, if you all work together, let us have a 2-digit medal tally for athletics. Thank you very much. Thank you, Walker.
And
President, sir, thank you very much, sir, to attend the whole session. Thank you so much, sir.
yeah, thank you, Mr. Adil. Maybe you want to give a short closing speech as well?
No, not really. I think it was a great session. I hope the coaches will have lots of questions. I think if they have questions, they should email them to you so that you could, before you start your next session, if they have any doubts, you can probably just quickly sum up all the questions that are there so that you don't waste time. And I also request people that when they come on, please mute yourselves. Secondly, don't just keep sending questions, saying thank you and things like that. Please use the chat to ask all the important questions, because when so many people are just saying, I am here, I am so and so, I have joined, there is no need for that. Because then the questions get lost. Then, we miss the questions. So please send your questions, send an email to Radhakrishna or to Folka or wherever. I don't know, give them whichever email ID. Please ask your questions, because we want you to clear all the doubts you have in your mind. And later, if you still want another conversation, that can be set up separately if you have some separate doubts. But please send your questions. We need the help of all the coaches. Like I said, if we want to become a sporting superpower, we will have to improve the quality of our sports science, because sports is nothing but just plain science. And if we are not able to apply the sciences, we are not going to succeed beyond a point. We will reach a point and then we will crash. You all have this great opportunity now. You have some fantastic faculty that's going to be there. So please send in your questions, and Radha and Folka and Rajmohan, you can get all the questions together. And maybe there are 3 or 4 people wanting to know the same things that I'm seeing on the chat. So,
yep.
So they can all be combined and then just answered, just be combined and answered. So good luck to all of you. I hope this session was good. And I'm also looking forward to attending your next session. Thank you very much.
Before closing, there is an information. Tomorrow onwards, the classes will start from morning 10 a.m. Not from 3 a.m. It will be, not from 3 p.m. It will be from 10 a.m. to 11 and sometimes 11:30. Morning 10 a.m. to 11:30. And thank you, Anju Bobby George, be with us. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and I can only strongly encourage you to join the remaining sessions as well, because we plan this program as a holistic program. Yeah, you will have the best output if you actually attend all the sessions. We will also start giving you a bit of homework to do, so that helps you to become a better coach like this lockdown. Yeah. Thank you very much for listening. Have a good evening. I think some of you will join the sports science class, which starts at 5 o'clock. Enjoy it. And if you have some questions, I think we will introduce an email address where you can send all the questions. We'll share that with you by tomorrow, if that's all right. Yeah, have a good evening, and thanks a lot for joining. Bye.
Thank you, sir. Once again, thank you to all participants. I think the senior ED, Colonel Vaishnavi sir, has left this meeting, so we are ending the meeting. So thank you very much. Thank you all.